This video is going to show how to create an amortization schedule. And I'm going to show you how to create it mainly for leases, but it can be used for bonds also. And it will definitely apply to anybody who is taking intermediate accounting courses. So to get started on creating one, we're going to go ahead and open Excel. And now that Excel is open, we're going to go ahead and do a blank workbook. Now that we have our blank workbook open, I'm going to click in here and lengthen out a couple of these really quick. And if you haven't watched the video I created about the present value and future value and how to do those in Excel, I would suggest going and watching that before continuing this video, because it'll be very beneficial to understand the present and future values, and we're going to use a little bit of that in this as we create the schedule. First thing we want to do is we want to give this a name, so we're going to call it the schedule of lease payments, and we're going to say it's an amortization schedule. And for this schedule, we're going to say it's only going to be a 5-year beginning of period schedule. Now that we have given it a name and we have an idea of how long it's going to be, we are going to give it the payments. So annual lease payments. We come over here and we're going to make that 60,000 for now. The next category, we're going to put the bargain purchase price or residual value. And this is going to be what the end value of the lease is going to be at the end of the term. So we can put that at, let's say, 30,000. Now we are going to put the interest rate of the lease, and we'll say that that is going to be 7%. And finally, we're going to put number of lease payments, which is going to coincide with our years, so we're going to have 5 years, 5 payments. Now that we have those values, we can create the present value of everything we're going to owe over this time, or a lease obligation, you can call it, which is what we're going to be obligated to pay. So what you do is you put an equal sign, and we're going to do a negative present value. And first we're going to click on the rate and put a comma. Then we're going to click on number of periods, which is the 5, and put a comma. Then we're going to click on the 60,000 because that's our annual payment, put a comma. And we're going to click on the residual value, which is the future value in this case, or value left over at the end. Put a comma, and we said we're going to be doing the beginning of period, so we'll go ahead and click on the 1 for beginning of period and hit enter. I put a negative in there already to keep it so that it stays a positive number. We can also come up here and turn this into the dollar format and turn this into the dollar format just to make it look a little better. And now that it's set up like this, you can come in here and you can change any of these values to whatever you need. Okay, now we're going to create the table. So we're going to start with the date, then the annual amount to pay. The next column is going to be our interest expense, or the interest that we pay. And then next we're going to put the principal. And finally we're going to have our lease obligation here, which is going to get smaller as we go. I'm going to whiten a few of these, just make it look a little bit better. So for the date, we need a start or an initial balance, you could call it. Then we need the beginning of year 1 payment, the beginning of year 2 payment, the beginning of year 3 payment, beginning of year 4 payment, beginning of year 5, and then we also need an end of year 5 payment. Now to make everything flow Simply, we're going to come over here under lease obligation. We're going to put an equal sign and just click on the cell that has the lease obligation amount and hit enter. That way, if you do adjust any of these in the future for your own purposes, this will automatically adjust this number, which will automatically adjust this number, and all of these future numbers. Now we're going to come over here to under the annual amount, and we're going to hit another equal sign. You can either click on this cell or you can just start typing it, but if you click on this cell, you need to come back in here, and before the C you put a dollar sign, and then in between the C and the 5 you put another dollar sign, and then you hit enter. The reason why I did it this way is so that when you click the bottom right corner right here and you slide down, we're only going to do the beginning of years, and you do that, it'll keep it the same number, and all of these cells will be tied into this account. So if we change this, say to 70,000, they will all follow suit. It will also update this amount here and here. The end of year 5 is going to be the residual value, so you can just hit an equal sign and then click on that cell and hit enter, and you will always have that number corresponding there. Now I'm going to come back up here and change this back to 60, keep it the same as it was earlier, and we're going to come here under interest expense in beginning of year 1, we're going to put a 0, because at the beginning of the year our first payment there hasn't been any accrued interest yet, so that's just a 0, which makes it nice and easy. Now the principal is going to always equal the annual payment minus the interest expense. So you click on these two cells with a minus sign in between them and you hit enter, and it'll make it so that the annual payment minus interest expense is how much principal has been calculated. Now we're going to come here and we can click on the bottom right corner. Once you see your plus sign turn dark, you can click that and drag it all the way down through all of those. These numbers will change as we add in interest expense automatically. Now we're going to come up here to the beginning of year 1 under lease obligation, and we're going to hit an equal sign, and we're going to click on the cell above minus the principal and hit enter, and that's going to give how much is left on our lease obligation to pay. Now that we have that, we can actually click and drag and go all the way through. Now you'll see, go all the way through. You'll see that there are negatives right here, but that's because we haven't updated our interest expense yet. We're going to come over here to interest expense and click on the beginning of year 2. Interest expense is going to be calculated by hitting an equal sign, and we're going to click on the beginning of year 1 at the end, the lease obligation right here, the 224. And then we're going to put a star, or to times it, multiply it by this cell with the interest rate. Now, because we do not want, as we copy this formula down through the rest of the cells, we don't want this formula to move down, we're going to do the dollar signs again. Just one before the C and after the C right here. That'll make it so that that cell is always right there, even though this cell will move down as it calculates our interest. After you've done that, you can hit enter, and you can see it'll automatically calculate the interest for the period. Now that we've finished all of that, we can come here, click with the little dark plus, drag it down, and it'll automatically update these cells to coincide with these, so that you have your interest decreasing as your principal increases to pay off the amount of the lease. As you can see, our lease obligation is now 0, which means we have paid off everything we were supposed to pay with the lease, with our payments going through, with the interest already calculated in. You can do a similar thing with mortgage payments if you wanted to. You would drag this down to 15, 20, 30 years, however many years it is. You would want to put in a realistic interest rate or realistic amount of mortgage payments and mortgage amounts, but you can do the exact same thing conceptually. And as you can see, you can come in here, you can play around, you can put this at 45,000, you could even put this at an 8% interest rate. You can do all sorts of things that as you play around with these numbers, it will automatically update the lease obligation, which updates it here, and will automatically update your whole table around here. If you wanted to, you could click and drag, come up here, make it look nice by putting borders around it, make it look a little more official. There's other things you can do to design it to make it look more professional, but that is the concept of how you create a amortization schedule. Now subscribe to the Pearson How To's channel so that you won't miss out on any other videos we put out as we show you how to do similar things with retirement savings, with trip saving plans, and many other videos that go through all sorts of different subjects and content. Thank you for viewing, and we will see you next time.